All right, so welcome back from break, everybody. I'm going to start now with module 7.2. Just as a reminder, this session is being recorded as well as live streamed, and then it will be distributed on YouTube moving forward. We actually will be having some group discussion via breakout rooms today. We'll get those set up after we get through our initial slides here, and then you'll have some time to get some feedback on your hackathon projects. So hackathon materials can be found in the hackathon folder link. Let me put that in the chat because you will be needing that here in just a minute. So we are making some breakout rooms here. Like I was saying, please don't join them yet. We will, after we get through the initial slides here, we'll have each instructor move to a separate room and people can kind of move around the breakout rooms and get help as they need it. So there is the hackathon materials folder. Again, if you have not joined the Slack yet somehow, please go ahead and do that. The Slack will be important for teaming and for discussion during the hackathon. So if you are planning on participating, please do make sure that you're signed up with the Slack. So for those who have not seen this slide yet, I'm just going to run through it quickly just to give you some information on what we're looking at for the rest of the week. So the hackathon will be this weekend, Saturday, August 12th and Sunday, August 13th. We'll have a little bit of time for lightning talks for anybody who would still like to present their work. We'll have some today after this session, and then we'll have some tomorrow as well during the extra session. So if you feel like you need an extra day to get your presentation ready after you've had a chance to talk about it today, there will be time. We can also potentially talk about having some additional time on Friday if people need 2 extra days. But if you have your idea mostly ready and you just needed to ask some questions about it today, please do feel free to discuss it in the extra session before lunch today. You don't have to have a formal presentation ready. You're still happy to allow you some time to do your project pitch if you would just like to do it more informally. Again, organizing teams will be mostly self-organized. We can help people find a group or help people find members. Once we have a better idea of which projects are going to continue on into the hackathon, we can start helping people with that tomorrow and Friday. The hackathon will consist mostly of open work time. We'll have check-ins in the morning and at noon with the whole group to get a feel for where everybody is. And then in the evenings, you'll have a little bit of extra time to give us a brief, more formal report that will have a couple of slides for you to fill out, basically, so that we can have you present a little bit on your progress each day. And we are available after the hackathon to continue helping with these projects, so please don't worry if you feel like you didn't make as much progress as you wanted to during the hackathon. We will be around to help in the future as well. So for the schedule, and this will become important in a couple of slides here. Again, we'll have 1 hour at the beginning of Saturday to finish with organizing teams. Usually people need just a little bit of extra time to get the teams finalized. From 11 to 1, you'll have a work block. We'll do our quick check-in from 1 to 1:30. You'll have another work block from 1:30 to 5 p.m. And then we'll do our first day reports in the last half hour of the day. Day 2, very similar. You'll have a larger work block from 10:30 to 2, since we don't have to spend the full hour in the morning on team organizing. And then from 5 to 6, we'll have an hour for people to give kind of their final reports of how the hackathon worked out. You can present your model, give us some discussion of challenges you faced and things that you think would be useful for the whole group to know that were unique to your particular project. Before we move on to the next thing, there's a couple of notes I want to make here, just about thinking about models. We've talked a little bit about this a couple times over the last 2 weeks. And we have this sort of framework that we've presented of this idea of models consisting of 4 different groups of elements, of objects, behaviors and interactions, initial and boundary conditions, and dynamics and events. I'm not going to go too deep into the philosophy of this again today. I just wanted to kind of bring this up as a refresher, because the main point here is that when we're building models, nothing exists until we decide that it exists within the model. As James has said, we don't inherit anything for free. But the big point about that is that because of that, we have to choose what is. So if nothing exists until we assert it, we are responsible for choosing what is asserted, which is where your project scope becomes very important. So I have a quick 5-minute exercise for us to do before we get started on our breakout rooms on defining your biological concept. So I'm going to post this link here. Let me find it real quick. So this is just a little primer for everyone to start thinking about their project before we take it into the breakout room. So here is the link to the brainstorming document. There will be a few questions on there. The document's 10 pages. It's just 10 duplicates of the same page, so people can grab a blank page and start filling in the answers. And if you need additional pages, please feel free to create them. This will just give us an idea of where people are, what you're thinking. So again, these questions are, think about your biological problem of interest. What are the specific hypotheses that you're trying to test with this model that you're building? So why are you building the model, basically? How can these things be measured? So this question is basically, and this is in the document, what kinds of outputs are you expecting from the model? At the end of it, if it's built according to what you have in your head, what kind of output do you expect to get from it? What are the key components you wish to model and why? And then what are some of these model elements that pertain to your model? So I'll give people 5 minutes starting now to start thinking about that. And if you want to follow this link I posted here, we can go ahead and do this. So if you don't have a project idea and you are interested in participating in the hackathon, but you don't want to be a team leader, that's perfectly fine. Just take a minute to kind of review the document, watch what people are putting in, think about what which of these project ideas you may be useful to. All right, so now we've done a little bit of thinking about what we're trying to do here with each project. The idea here, so we've talked again about this modeling workflow. Obviously, during the hackathon, this is going to be a little bit intensive for a 2-day project. Most of your time during the hackathon will be spent here in the implement choices as simulation step. The whole point is to get you some hands-on experience. But the purpose of bringing all this up now is the idea that you do still need to spend a little bit of time on some version of this. So it will obviously be truncated during the hackathon. But the point here is to get you thinking about your project in terms of what it is you're actually trying to accomplish with your model before you begin just jumping straight into the implementation, because understanding that framework will help guide the implementation process, particularly once you run into challenges. So we do recommend that each group takes a little bit of time at the beginning of the hackathon on Saturday to spend at least 30 minutes to maybe an hour talking as a group about some of these more conceptual questions about the model before you jump straight into the code, to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what the model is trying to do. Because if we don't agree about what the model is trying to do, then the chances that your code is going to work together are definitely lower. Goswami says, would it be possible to join a group other than leading a project? Absolutely. So we can help you do that over the course of this session and the next couple of days as well. So some thoughts on scoping. We'll talk about model purpose first. These are just some guideline questions that we like to ask the groups before they get started. So the big question is, what are we trying to do? What question or questions is our model trying to answer? What hypothesis are we testing? Is this based on something that we've observed experimentally, and we want to use the model to do some hypothesis testing around that? Is this something that can only be tested computationally? Basically, what is the simulation's function? And And then what do we expect or want the final results to look like, so that you have some baseline for testing once you get the framework built up. The next big question is, can the phenomenon we're modeling be broken down into component parts? The answer is almost always yes. But then some follow-ups there is, how long will each part take to model? Is a single component enough for a 2-day project, or do we need a couple of components? It's always safer to shoot for one component first, because you can always add complexity as you go. It's very hard to scope back down if the goal was overambitious or overly complex. But if you start out simple, you can always add that complexity on as you finish different stages of the initial implementation. And then the third question there is, which piece is most foundational? Which components do we need first? So these are questions to ask yourself as a group before you get too deep into the actual coding process. Another thing you need to think about, in addition to just what the purpose of your model is team logistics. So this is another big thing when you have a 2-day project like this. Team management becomes pretty important. Keep in mind that you have 2 days to prototype your project. So most people probably will not be leaving the weekend with a completed simulation of exactly what they were trying to model. The idea is to get a prototype working that you can build upon moving forward. You'll have 10.5 hours of free work time over the course of the weekend during the day where we will be available. Obviously, people can work, and usually do work, extra hours outside of, where we end at 6 o'clock. There's really not enough time just in the time that the meeting is live to get things done, but we will be available for 10.5 hours of work time during the weekend, which is enough for people to get a lot done, but it is not a lot of time. So you want to make sure that you have some of these logistical things thought about ahead of time. Somebody has launched the module experience questionnaire. It's popped up on my screen. So some important questions to address about team logistics. Ask yourselves as a group, what is the end goal for the weekend? What are we trying to get to? What is each person going to do? And that doesn't have to be a permanent job necessarily, but each time you decide to shift to a new focus for what's getting done on the project, you should reassess what each person is currently doing so that everybody knows what everybody else in the team is doing. And then one thing to think about ahead of time is, how will those pieces be combined when we're done? So if you have 2 people working on 2 pieces of code, you have to think about how those things will be merged together in the simulation later. At least the 2 people that are doing the code, 2 or 3 people that are doing the code, should talk to each other about what sorts of conventions they're using for different things. That's kind of up to each group to determine what level of complexity or sophistication of code combination they want to use. But the important thing is just to think about, once we have these disparate pieces, how will we combine them into one piece? Another big thing to ask yourself once you've talked about the model purpose is, what don't we know yet? What do we still need to learn, and when are we going to learn it? The corollary to this is, who's going to learn it? Because you probably won't have time for everybody in your group to be reading Wikipedia for 2 hours. So if we need to learn how to do something, who's going to go do that? And then how will they communicate it to the group later? Because we all need to know it. And lastly, what is the protocol when things don't work out? So if you're running into challenges, your code's not going as expected, what is the kind of process that the group will engage in to figure out what's going wrong and how to solve the problem? Again, you don't have a ton of time to go through these, but it's important that these things come up at least briefly before you get started on your project during the hackathon. So with that out of the way, just 2 more quick slides, and then we'll move to breakout rooms. So again, there's going to be some time in the extra session after this session to do lightning talks, if anybody still wants to, or tomorrow as well. So once you get time to answer some questions today, if you would like to give a pitch or a project pitch to try to recruit some members, there will be time for that. Again, the template can be found in the hackathon folder. If you would like to use that, you'll have 3 to 5 minutes each. I mean, depending on the number of presentations, you may have longer, but shoot for 3 to 5. And we can talk more about that at the end of the session if needed. Again, just a reminder, we have this ongoing list of hackathon project ideas. So if you, let me grab this link. If you're interested in participating and potentially leading a group, but you don't have a solid idea of what you want to do yet, you can refer to this list. And this is a list of papers that we've collected over the years that we think are good candidates for reproducing in CompuCell. So some of them have been built using other software. Some of them are just models that CompuCell would be good for reproduction. But looking at this list can help take some of the conceptual heavy lifting out of having to define your own biological problem. So this list can help if you don't have an idea yet, but would like to maybe lead a group. You can take a look through this tonight. Sharon asks, so everybody does a pitch or only people who haven't done one yet? So we don't like to force people to do their project pitches, but if you do have a group forming already, we do recommend taking some time tomorrow to do a lightning talk, just to let people know that the group has solidified and you are planning to move forward in the hackathon. All right, and please do, after the end of this session today, please do, if you have a project idea, put it in the teaming document. We can talk a little bit more during the extra session about that if we need to. Let me get the link, and then we will move to breakout rooms. There it is. Here's a link to the Hackathon teaming document. If you have not put your information in this teaming document yet, please do so at some point today. If you would like to join a project, please just add your name to the list of people looking for projects to join. And if you find a project over the course of the day today, please go in and add your name to the group members list for that project in the listing, assuming it's been put in there, just so that we know who's currently already thinking about participating in a particular project and who's still looking. All right, so now we can move to our open discussion time. So I think James has made some breakout rooms. If people who have project ideas and are interested in getting some help would like to move to one of those rooms. Let's see, James, what do you think the best way is to do this? Should we have instructors move to the rooms first and then people join with an instructor?
Well, why don't we have a general open discussion first? Who would like to talk to whom? I think is probably the most important thing.
That's a good point. So in the chat, go ahead and put, if you would like to join a breakout room, if you have a particular instructor you would like to talk to.
And you'll be able to share screen and use the whiteboards in the breakout rooms.
Yeah, and speak, obviously. But we'll have the instructors circulate every 15 minutes or so. So if you can't talk to the person you wanted to talk to immediately, it's fine to start talking to someone else, and then we can kind of have the instructors shuffle around as needed.
Well, actually, I named the breakout rooms by the instructors, but we can always.
Well, maybe we can have participants move around then. Let's do it that way, actually. That's probably the easiest.
I mean, let's put it this way, if nobody asks any question, I mean, we had a good example earlier of somebody asking some great questions. If nobody asks any questions, this isn't going to work. So we need you to take the initiative on this.
Yes. So I think the plan for this for right now is I'm going to stay in the main meeting here. People who have questions about team logistics, about getting help with grouping, things like that, are welcome to stay here and ask those questions. If you need help with your specific biological problems, I would join one of the groups with one of the other instructors.
And if for some reason an instructor can't be there, then if you jump into a room and there's nobody there, then they're not there. So go and look for someone else. And I know it's not the most efficient thing in the world. If we had people's teams ideas before, then it would be maybe easier to have all the team rooms and then have people be able to circulate and talk to potential team leaders. But for today, we'll do it this way.
Yes, and one other thing to note before you join the breakout rooms is that once you're in the breakout room, there is not an easy way for the main session to communicate with you. So we will meet back here, let's say at 12:55 to kind of wrap up the session.
So yes, so I know Cesar wanted to try to find people doing the bacterial migration. It's a great project. So I was hoping some people might. There were a couple of people who were interested in that. So I was hoping that somehow we'd be able to team them up.
So why don't we have another 45 minutes before lunch? Why don't we move any more lightning talks people have to Thursday and Friday and spend the next 45 minutes here continuing to talk in the breakout rooms? And so what I would encourage people to do at this point probably is to meet up with people in a different breakout room that you haven't talked to yet. But Pedro has to go. We're going to be down one instructor.
We're down two because I think Jim Sluka had to leave too.
Yeah, Sluka had to leave too. So we've got James and Gilberto still available.
Joel
and Joel as well. But if you join a room with an instructor and it's too busy, find a room with some other people. So I think, like Dr. Glazer was saying, Cesar is looking for some people who are interested in the bacterial trail project. So look for Cesar and join his group if you're interested in that. So you guys can talk it over, and I will go ahead and open the rooms back up here.
And we're supposed to go till when?
Until 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Do we need to do any renaming or removing of the groups before we open them?
No, does anybody? I mean, I'm happy to talk. So I guess, Edgar, I hope that was useful. I'm happy to talk to you again. Let me try to talk to somebody else this time. It's too bad, Pedro. Well, Joel, have you done any surrogate stuff yet?
I don't know what you mean by surrogate. Sorry.
Network surrogates. Have you tried to load? Didn't you try last semester? Didn't you try loading TensorFlow or PyTorch classes into CompuCell?
Yeah, I did that. For.
Did it work?
For a project, it did work, especially for cell movement. If that's the bacteria project's trying to do.
No, Edgar wants to. He has some enormous flux balance model, which has something like 5 inputs and 10 outputs, but some horrible thing in the middle. He wants to create a training set of a bunch of input and output condition, train a tiny surrogate that's practical to load into his cells. And it's a static model. So you just have input numbers, output numbers, pairs.
There's also he doesn't need to, I don't think he needs to do that inside CompuCell, because I think it's a different type of problem that we were trying to do on that project.
Well, the training will be outside.
Yeah, and then he just load the trained
network to do the
network to the thing. Yeah.
So Joel, so Cesar, I'm sorry, Edgar, Joel can talk to you a little bit about that. He's done this kind of work, if you like. Anybody else? Is there somebody who has to? I mean, I'm happy to talk to anybody, but again, the problem is it takes time to talk to individuals. So I'm happy to have multiple people in the room. Joel, let's talk about that later, if it's all right. So shall we try this again? Did this work at all? Do you want to? I'm not quite sure what the best way of doing this is. It's a little bit like office hours. It never quite works. But I'm happy to talk to people if anybody's interested. And Gilberto, I know Gilberto's great at advising. Joel's great at advising.
Yeah. James, before you leave, can we give everybody unmute privileges?
Oh, you should have them. Did they get muted again? You can all unmute. It's set. You're set to be able to unmute.
Yeah, Edgar says he can't.
Yes.
No, try
Yeah,
now.
I unmute.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. The setting. I had it set so everybody could, and somehow it flipped when I came when I came back into the session. Sometimes when the host of the meeting, usually when I'm host of the meeting, I stay in the top level, because when the host of the meeting jumps into breakouts, it does sometimes strange things to the Zoom settings. So I apologize for that. Right. Okay, anybody else, anything general, or do you want to go back and try another round robin with different people talking to different people? Is there anybody who did not get to talk to anybody? Because you should
I
get
haven't talked to anyone, but my thoughts are unclear, so I don't know if it would really help for me to share them at this stage. But I did email Hayden yesterday with a kind of a word salad of the things I've been thinking about. But
I'm happy to go into a breakout room and talk to you for 10 minutes about that and see whether we can get started. That's fine.
Yep, that's what this session is for.
If there's one thing I'm good at in the world, it's trying to help people define models. Very often they go away saying, I don't want to do anything. I can't do what I want to do, which is okay. I'd much rather, as I say, many months at the computer can save several hours in the library.
Yeah.
An old joke. Which is, building models is time consuming. Now, of course, spending 2 days in a hackathon is not a huge loss of your time. So at the end of 2 days, if you decide it's not what you need, that's all right. But I'd rather help people avoid. I was saying this with Edgar. I had a student, actually, a very good student, whose simulation we ran on the first day, that colonic crypt simulation, which we loaded and ran. And he wanted to try to do something where he loaded an enormous metabolism model into every cell and run it. And it took months for him to do it. And in the end, the results were not interesting. And so, which I knew from before he started, actually, because I know something, I have some intuition about these, having done it for 30 years. But on the other hand, he learned something by doing it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do like to try to help people design projects that are manageable for people. I don't always know. I can be wrong. Sometimes I'll say, I don't think it's going to work. Somebody shows me it works. I'm delighted. But I do think that this problem definition is the hardest part of the problem. Can you narrow a problem down enough that it's something that's soluble? Meaningfully soluble. It's not easy to do. And that's why we had these couple of lectures about sort of principles of modeling.
right.
But I mean, you could have a whole week course on that and still not go through it in detail. In other words, we could have a whole week where people just start with an idea and go walk through step by step. Let's spend a whole week designing a project out of that. And so I don't want to waste people's time, but I think it's not something that people teach very much. Engineers do learn things like failure analysis and problem scoping. Scientists tend not to learn that. For some reason, I think the engineers are better, because actually the engineers have to deliver results. That's maybe why they learn it. Anyway, okay. So Hayden, if you want to do breakouts again, I'm happy to go back into a breakout room and talk.
Yep, let's go ahead and try that. If you are unsure of where to go, if you're looking for somebody in particular, you can use the main session for direction. So if you join a group and it's too busy, you can come back here and we can find you another group to talk to somebody about.
And especially if you want to try to get together a team and talk with other people in the group in the workshop, not instructors, stay at the main session and have Hayden help cluster you together. Okay, I think that's probably the best strategy. Well, I hope that was productive for people. I know not I didn't get to talk to everybody. The 3 people I talked to all have great ideas, so happy to try to find time to meet with people between now and the weekend, or for that matter, the weekend morning. But it does take a while to have these conversations. It's just, for me, I don't know the project, so it takes me some time to think about it. Okay, take over, Hayden. You're in charge.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that was pretty much all I had. We're 5 minutes into lunch, so I do want to make sure that everybody has a nice lunch break. But any For the people who are still here and haven't left for lunch yet, any questions before we break?
Is there anybody who wants to do a project who has still stuck, has nowhere to start? If speak up, and we'll do our best to help you out, either pairing you up with somebody. I know Kieran has a great idea, which could be generalized very well. I was talking with I guess she's not here now. With someone else who had a great project too, an immunology project, which would be a great one to do.
Yeah, any questions, or is there anybody who still would like to talk to somebody before the hackathon begins who didn't get to talk to them today? That includes Pedro and Jim Sluka, people who aren't here currently. We could try to work
Julio
on
could
getting-
probably give some good advice. Priya might be available to give some advice. Josh has done a lot of great modeling. It's cancer modeling, immune modeling. He might be willing to meet people too.